Electricity, one of the most, or arguably the most important discovery till this day. My name is Peter, and I will be talking about how nuclear energy is the most reliable energy-producing resource in the US. These resources are the things that power our lights, phones, computers, you name it. If it's electrical, it can be found that its resource, or its energy source, can originate from these resources. Now, according to the US Energy Information Administration, as of 2016, 65% of electricity comes from fossil fuels such as petroleum, coal, and natural gases. 15% comes from renewable resources such as wind, solar, and hydroelectricity. And 20% comes from our main topic, which is nuclear energy. Nuclear energy, in comparison to the other sources we have, is the most cost-efficient, environmentally friendly, and contrary to popular belief, it is actually indeed safe. Now, starting off with my first point, I will be clearing out many misconceptions people have about nuclear energy. Many people see that, oh, nuclear energy, they associate that with nuclear bombs and all the destruction they have caused. But this is not really true. We're talking about nuclear reactors. John Rich, a US ambassador, researched an incident of a nuclear power plant that has malfunctioned on 3 Mile Island in 1979. Now, his research showed that there was no harm to the public, even though they were exposed to radiation. In many cases, low levels of radiation is not harmful, but also beneficial to the public. Leslie Corris, a researcher who has also looked into many instances where nuclear power plants have malfunctioned, quotes, "Low-level background radiation and all doses near background is the operational catalyst for the immune systems in mammals. No radiation exposure and the immune system does not work. A mortality rate of 100% at zero radiation dose due to massive immune system dysfunction." Thus, the studies seem to demonstrate that we cannot live without low levels of radiation. A simple explanation is that low-level radiation exposure improves an individual's cell's ability to repair damaged DNA. Another way of putting it is how physical exercise improves our strength and muscle tone. Now, don't get me wrong, high levels of radiation can be very harmful to a person. However, with the new technology used in the safety of nuclear power plants today, engineers say that if a reactor ran for about 100,000 years, only one instance is it possible that the nuclear reactor actually malfunctions and is harmful to the public. The technological strides that we have today almost guarantees that nuclear reactors are a safe way to generate our electricity. Many of you have probably already have that question in mind. Well, I've heard about nuclear waste. What do we do with that? Well, again, many people underestimate the abilities of our technology. And so most nuclear waste consists of relatively short-lived, low-level waste that can be handled safely through standard techniques of controlled burial or storage until they're harmless again. Completely. Beginning with my second point, nuclear energy is cost-efficient. All forms of energy requires large sums of money to begin with. Hydroelectricity requires a dam. Fossil fuels require power plants. Wind requires wind turbines. Solar energy requires solar panels. And of course, nuclear energy requires nuclear power plants. Now, with all of them having a high cost to begin with, the cost efficiency largely depends on the cost of the materials needed and how reliable they can be. Wind, solar, and hydroelectricity are automatically out of the running. They are all circumstantial and cannot be considered reliable. Wind and solar are weather dependent, and hydroelectricity requires a large body of water to support it. Fossil fuel and nuclear energy are the only energy source that can be consistently used. Unfortunately, fossil fuels are quickly depleted, while the material for nuclear energy, which is uranium, is predicted to last another 70 to 80 years, which is much longer than any fossil fuel is predicted to last. In addition, transportation costs does not support fossil fuel in any way. 1 kilogram of uranium will yield about 20,000 times as much energy as the same amount of coal or any natural gas. That shows that transportation costs for fossil fuels will be exponentially higher than for nuclear energy. Even then, uranium, when used to power a nuclear power plant, can be reprocessed into plutonium, which can be then used again to create even more electricity. With nuclear energy being both reliable in any situation and cost-effective, it is much more reliable than any other energy source. Now for my final point, which is that nuclear energy is environmentally friendly. Many people are against non-renewable resources such as fossil fuels because they are the root of global warming. Because fossil fuels generate a greenhouse gas such as carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which leads to global warming. Unlike fossil fuels, nuclear energy has no carbon dioxide emissions. Fossil fuels, however, make up 82% of the greenhouse gases emission. Any waste coming from nuclear energy does not affect the environment because it is properly buried or stowed. And so the process of creating electricity from nuclear energy is completely environmentally friendly. Even though there are many other energy producing resources that also do not contribute to global warming, the environment, they are terribly inefficient. According to the US Energy Information Administration, solar power and wind power combined make a little over 5% of the current US power usage, and so they will not be able to sustain the energy required to run the US. Now that you can see that nuclear energy, accompanied by today's technology, is proven to be safe, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly, with all these facts, the underlying truth is that nuclear energy is the most reliable energy source we have in the US. Thank you.
All right, Peter, the proposition's clearly identified. There is a preview, but the preview sounds like it's not in the same order as the supporting structure, and it's not really indicated it's the preview, although I thought it was reasonably obvious that that's what was going on there. I was a little bit confused when the argument in cost efficiency turned out to be your second point rather than your first point, so that's why I thought there was a little bit of a problem there. You do label those points, though, as you go through the speech pretty clearly, so the structure of the speech is easy to follow. For the most part, you explain a lot of things in the argument. I think you get a little sidetracked on this notion that the immune system needs to have exposure to nuclear power. I think you get off track here. I know your point is to show that it is not unsafe, it's not particularly dangerous, but it really makes it sound like your justification for nuclear power is to encourage us all to be healthy people, in which case apparently we all need to move someplace where there's a nuclear power plant, so we're going to get that background radiation. I don't think that that's the point that you want to be making there. I think there are better arguments to be made about the safety of nuclear power when it comes to the environment and human exposure. You make one reference to 3 Mile Island. Then there's a suggestion at one point that there would never be any accidents that would take lives, except for, I think you had some phenomenal number, like maybe 1 life in 1,000 years, something like that. And I'm going, well, I'm not sure that that's going to stand up given some of the history of nuclear power plants. There are examples that people could point to that will suggest that there are problems with those nuclear power plants. I think it would have been more practical to maybe address some of those kinds of issues. The thing that I think is most problematic is a lot of the information that you present is never cited as evidence. It's presented as a piece of fact without any justification for it. There were 2 or 3 citations. You had the U.S. Energy Information Agency you cited a couple times. You had Rich that you mentioned one time. And I think there was another source that you quoted also. But there's a whole bunch of stuff here that I think gets said without any particular proof on it. And I'm not that, like the whole thing about storage, I got nothing bupkis when it comes to supporting information. All the stuff about plutonium and how long it's going to, or that it's recyclable, how long the uranium is going to last us, there's no source citation on that. I'm sure that this information didn't just get made up. You just need to cite it more consistently. I think you do a very nice job speaking to the audience, and so that enhances your credibility a bit, but the lack of references to some of the information that you're presenting, and I think your focus on some side issues is a little distracting. All right, thank you.